Welcome everyone. Today we are taking a close look at one of the most interesting United States postage stamps ever issued, the famous 1-cent numeral stamp. At first glance, this small red stamp may appear ordinary, and many people might assume it is worth only a single cent. However, the truth is much more fascinating. Depending on its printing variety, condition, rarity, and historical significance, this stamp can range in value from just a few cents to several $100s, and in extremely rare cases, even thousands of dollars. In today's video, we will explore the complete history of this classic American stamp, discover why collectors around the world are interested in it, learn what determines its market value, and reveal how much this stamp may be worth in today's stamp collecting market. Make sure to stay until the end because some important details can completely change the value of a stamp that looks almost identical to another. The stamp you are seeing is the United States 1-cent numeral definitive stamp. Unlike portrait stamps that feature famous American leaders such as George Washington or Benjamin Franklin, this design is centered around a large decorative number 1. The design is simple yet elegant, with the words United States Postage printed around the top and the denomination shown again in the lower corners. Although millions of these stamps were produced for everyday postal use, they remain an important part of American philatelic history because they represent a period when postage stamps were designed primarily for functionality rather than elaborate artwork. The United States Postal Service issued many different 1-cent stamps throughout the 20th century because 1-cent postage played an important role in mailing newspapers, postcards, printed matter, advertising circulars, and additional postage fees. Since postal rates changed over time, the government continuously produced enormous quantities of 1-cent stamps to meet public demand. As a result, most examples found today are common, but certain varieties have become collectible because of differences in printing, perforations, paper, gum, or production methods. One of the biggest misconceptions among new collectors is that every old stamp is valuable simply because it is old. This is not true. Age alone does not determine value. Millions or even billions of stamps were printed during the early 20th century, and many still survive today. The true value of a stamp depends on several important factors including rarity, condition, printing variety, collector demand, historical significance, and authenticity. Most common 1-cent United States stamps remain inexpensive despite being over 100 years old. Looking specifically at this red 1-cent numeral stamp, collectors first examine its overall condition. They carefully inspect the centering of the printed design. If the margins surrounding the design are equal on all 4 sides, the stamp becomes much more desirable. They also examine the perforations along the edges. Missing teeth, torn corners, or damaged perforations can significantly reduce value. The color is another important factor. A bright, fresh red color is generally more attractive than a faded or heavily stained example. If the stamp has never been used and still retains its original gum on the back without any hinge marks, its market value can increase considerably. Another important characteristic is whether the stamp has been used through the mail. Used stamps usually carry cancellation marks applied by the Postal Service. Light, neat cancellations are often preferred because they allow the design to remain clearly visible. Heavy black cancellations that cover most of the stamp may reduce collector appeal. Mint stamps that have never been used are generally worth more than used examples, especially if they retain original gum and have excellent centering. Printing varieties also play a major role in determining value. During production, different printings sometimes use slightly different papers, perforation measurements, or printing equipment. To an ordinary person these differences may be invisible, but experienced philatelists use magnification, watermark detectors, perforation gauges, and specialized catalogs to identify exactly which variety they possess. In some cases, 2 stamps that appear almost identical can differ in value by hundreds or even thousands of dollars because one variety is much scarcer than the other. Another fascinating aspect of stamp collecting is the discovery of printing errors. Throughout postal history, small mistakes occasionally occurred during the manufacturing process. These errors include inverted designs, missing colors, double impressions, misplaced perforations, or incorrect papers. Because very few error stamps escaped into public circulation, collectors are willing to pay substantial premiums for authenticated examples. Although most 1-cent numeral stamps are common, unusual production errors can become highly desirable and command impressive auction prices. So what is the approximate market value of this particular stamp today? In average used condition, examples commonly sell for around 10 cents to $2. And used examples without original gum may bring $1 to $5. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum and attractive centering can often sell for $5 to $25 or more. Scarcer printing varieties identified through specialized catalogs may reach values between $50 and several $100s. Exceptionally rare varieties or authenticated errors can be worth thousands of dollars, although these are extremely uncommon. Most ordinary examples found in family collections remain inexpensive because so many were originally produced. Many people search the internet and find listings showing similar stamps priced at thousands of dollars. It is important to understand that asking prices are not the same as actual selling prices. Anyone can list a common stamp for an unrealistic amount of money. Experienced collectors instead look at verified auction results and completed sales to determine real market value. A stamp only becomes worth what another collector is genuinely willing to pay. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone entering the hobby of stamp collecting. If you own one of these stamps, avoid cleaning it or attempting to improve its appearance. Cleaning chemicals, tape repairs, trimming the edges, or regamming the back can permanently reduce collector value. Professional collectors always prefer original condition, even if the stamp shows honest signs of age. Proper storage in archival albums or protective mounts will help preserve both its appearance and long-term collectible value. Stamp collecting remains one of the world's oldest and most rewarding hobbies because every stamp tells a story. A small piece of paper can reveal information about a country's history, economy, postal system, printing technology, and artistic design. Even when a stamp is not worth a fortune, it still represents an important historical artifact that has traveled through time, carrying messages across cities, states, and even continents. As we come to the end of today's video, we can see that this United States 1-cent numeral stamp is much more than a simple piece of postage. While the majority of examples are common and worth only a small amount, certain varieties, exceptional conditions, and rare production differences can dramatically increase their value. The key is proper identification, careful examination, and realistic expectations based on genuine market sales rather than inflated online listings. Whether your stamp is worth a few cents or several $100s, every collection begins with learning, observation, and appreciation for history. Next up, the beautiful United States 2-cent numeral stamp. At first glance, this small red stamp may seem like nothing more than an ordinary piece of old paper, but collectors know that appearances can be deceiving. While millions of these stamps were printed for everyday mail, certain varieties have become highly collectible because of their rarity, condition, printing differences, and historical importance. In today's video, we will uncover the complete history of this remarkable stamp, learn why collectors continue to search for it more than a century after it was first issued, discover what factors determine its value, and reveal how much this stamp may be worth in today's collector market. If you own one of these stamps or have found one in an old family collection, make sure to watch until the end because a few small details could make a very big difference in its value. The stamp featured here is the United States 2-cent numeral definitive stamp, recognizable by its bold and elegant number 2 displayed prominently in the center. The design is surrounded by detailed ornamental engraving, with the words United States Postage across the top and 2 cents clearly printed along the bottom. Although the design appears simple, it reflects the exceptional craftsmanship of American stamp engravers during the early 20th century. Every line, curve, and decorative element was carefully engraved to create a stamp that was not only practical for postal use but also attractive and difficult to counterfeit. During the early 1900s, the United States Postal Service relied heavily on 2-cent stamps because they matched one of the country's most common domestic letter rates. Every day, millions of letters traveled across the nation carrying personal messages, business correspondence, government documents, and postcards. Because of this enormous demand, billions of 2-cent stamps were produced over several decades. Today, these stamps remain an important reminder of a time when handwritten letters connected families, businesses, and communities long before email and smartphones existed. Many people believe that every old stamp is automatically valuable, but experienced collectors know that this is not the case. Age alone does not determine market value. Since enormous numbers of these 2-cent stamps were printed, many examples remain available today. Most surviving stamps are common and inexpensive. However, some varieties have become significantly more valuable because they were produced in smaller quantities, contain printing differences, or have survived in exceptional condition. One of the first things collectors examine is the overall condition of the stamp. Condition is one of the most important factors affecting value. A stamp with bright original color, sharp impressions, perfectly centered design, complete perforations, and no tears, stains, creases, or repairs will almost always command a higher price than a damaged example. Even small imperfections can reduce a stamp's value considerably because collectors are always searching for the finest surviving examples. Centering is especially important. If the printed design sits perfectly in the middle with equal margins on all four sides, collectors consider the stamp much more desirable. Poor centering, where the design is too close to one edge or partially cut off by perforations, can significantly reduce value even if the stamp is otherwise in excellent condition. The perforations along the edges also receive careful examination. These tiny holes allowed individual stamps to be separated from large printed sheets. Missing teeth, trimmed edges, short perforations, or uneven separation can reduce collector interest. Professional collectors frequently use perforation gauges to identify the exact perforation variety because different printings sometimes use different perforation measurements, and these differences may affect market value. Another major factor is whether the stamp has been used or remains mint. A used stamp has traveled through the mail and usually carries a cancellation mark applied by the Postal Service. Mint stamps have never been used and often retain their original gum on the reverse side. Mint examples with undisturbed original gum generally command much higher prices than used copies, especially when they remain in pristine condition after more than 100 years. One fascinating aspect of this series is that multiple printings were produced over many years. Although two stamps may appear almost identical to the naked eye, specialists can identify important differences involving paper type, watermark, perforation size, printing method, ink shade, and gum characteristics. These small details often separate common stamps worth only a few dollars from scarcer varieties valued at several $100s. This is why serious collectors rely on specialized stamp catalogs and precision measuring tools when identifying their collections. Collectors also pay close attention to printing errors. Throughout postal history, occasional mistakes occurred during the printing process. Some stamps were produced with missing colors, double impressions, inverted designs, misplaced perforations, or unusual paper varieties. These production errors escaped quality control in very small numbers, making them highly desirable among advanced collectors. While most 2-cent numeral stamps are common, authenticated error varieties can become extremely valuable because of their rarity. Historical significance adds another layer of interest. These stamps were issued during a remarkable period in American history when the nation experienced rapid industrial growth, expanding railroads, increased international trade, and dramatic improvements in communication. Every stamp that survived represents a small piece of that history. Some traveled across the country carrying family news, military correspondence, financial documents, or official government business. Each surviving stamp serves as a silent witness to an era when written letters formed the backbone of daily communication. Now let us discuss the current market value. Most used examples of the 2-cent numeral stamp typically sell for approximately 25 cents to $3 depending on condition and collector demand. Common and used examples without original gum generally range from $1 to $5. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum and excellent centering often sell between $10 and $50. Scarcer catalog varieties identified by watermark or perforation differences may bring prices ranging from $50 to several $100s. Truly exceptional certified examples with rare production characteristics or major printing errors can sometimes sell for $1,000 or more at specialized stamp auctions. It is important to understand that online asking prices should never be confused with actual market value. Many internet sellers list common stamps for hundreds or even thousands of dollars without ever finding a buyer. Professional collectors instead rely on completed auction sales, dealer price lists, and recognized stamp catalogs when determining realistic values. The true value of any stamp is based on verified sales between knowledgeable buyers and sellers rather than unrealistic asking prices. Authentication becomes increasingly important as the value of a stamp rises. Rare varieties are often submitted to professional philatelic experts who examine every detail under magnification. These experts verify whether the stamp is genuine, whether any repairs have been made, whether the gum is original, and whether the stamp matches the claimed catalog variety. Certified stamps generally command higher prices because buyers have greater confidence in their authenticity. If you happen to own one of these stamps, proper storage is essential. Collectors recommend handling stamps only with stamp tongs rather than fingers because natural skin oils can damage the paper over time. Stamps should be stored in acid-free albums, archival mounts, or protective sleeves away from direct sunlight, excessive humidity, dust, and insects. Proper storage helps preserve both appearance and long-term value for future generations. For beginners entering the world of stamp collecting, the 2-cent numeral stamp offers an excellent opportunity to learn about stamp identification. Because there are numerous varieties with subtle differences, collectors develop valuable skills by studying paper types, watermarks, perforations, gum conditions, and printing methods. Many experienced philatelists began their collections with affordable definitive stamps like this before moving on to rarer and more expensive issues. Stamp collecting continues to attract enthusiasts around the world because every stamp tells a unique story. Some represent important historical events, while others showcase artistic engraving, technological innovation, or changing postal systems. Even common stamps have educational value because they provide insight into the everyday lives of people who lived more than a century ago. Every letter carried by these stamps connected families, businesses, and communities across America during a time when written correspondence was one of society's most important forms of communication. Modern technology has also transformed the stamp market. Today, collectors can participate in online auctions, access digital stamp catalogs, compare prices from international dealers, and communicate with fellow collectors across the globe. This worldwide marketplace has made buying, selling, and identifying stamps easier than ever before, while also increasing competition for rare examples that appear at major auctions. As we reach the end of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 2-cent numeral stamp is much more than an old postage stamp. It is a fascinating piece of American postal history that reflects the craftsmanship, communication, and daily life of an earlier generation. Although most examples remain affordable and are worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, or authenticated errors can become surprisingly valuable. The key to determining value lies in careful identification, accurate grading, proper preservation, and realistic market research. Whether your stamp is worth a few cents, a few $100s, or much more, every collection begins with curiosity, knowledge, and appreciation for history. Next up, the United States 3-cent numeral stamp. At first glance, this beautiful red stamp may seem like nothing more than an ordinary piece of vintage postage, but behind its simple design lies an important chapter of American postal history. For more than a century, collectors around the world have searched for these stamps, carefully studying their different printings, varieties, and conditions. While millions of these stamps were printed for everyday mailing purposes, certain examples have become highly collectible and surprisingly valuable. In today's video, we will explore the fascinating history of the United States 3-cent numeral stamp, learn why it was issued, discover the factors that determine its market value, examine the rare varieties that collectors search for, and reveal how much this stamp may be worth in today's stamp collecting market. Stay with us until the very end because some small details that most people never notice can dramatically increase the value of a stamp that appears completely ordinary. The stamp shown here is known as the United States 3-cent numeral definitive stamp. It features a large decorative number 3 placed in the center of the design, surrounded by beautifully engraved ornamental patterns. The words United States appear across the top, while postage due is displayed in large letters across the center, with 3 cents printed at the bottom. The simple yet elegant design reflects the outstanding engraving techniques used by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing during the early 20th century. Every tiny line was engraved with incredible precision, making these stamps both functional and visually attractive. The 3-cent numeral stamp belongs to the famous United States Postage Due series. Unlike ordinary postage stamps that prepaid mailing costs, postage due stamps served a very different purpose. They were used when the sender failed to pay the correct amount of postage. Instead of returning the letter, the postal service delivered it to the recipient, who then paid the missing postage before receiving the mail. This system helped ensure that important letters could still reach their destinations while allowing the postal service to recover unpaid mailing fees. Postage due stamps have always fascinated collectors because they were never sold directly to the public for ordinary mail. Instead, they were used internally by post offices as accounting tools. Because of this specialized purpose, many postage due stamps experienced heavy postal handling, making high-quality surviving examples much scarcer than ordinary definitive postage stamps. During the early 20th century, millions of business letters, invoices, legal documents, magazines, newspapers, and personal correspondence traveled through the American postal system every day. Occasionally, mistakes happened. A sender might use insufficient postage, forget additional postage for extra weight, or miscalculate postal rates. When this occurred, postal clerks applied postage due stamps to indicate the amount that needed to be collected from the recipient. These small stamps played an essential role in keeping the postal system financially balanced. One of the reasons collectors admire postage due stamps is their distinctive appearance. Unlike colorful commemorative issues featuring presidents, historical events, or national landmarks, postage due stamps used bold numerals and simple engraved designs that emphasized clarity rather than decoration. Their practical purpose gave them a unique place in American philatelic history. Now let us discuss one of the most important subjects for collectors: market value. Many people assume that every old stamp is automatically valuable simply because it has survived for over 100 years. Unfortunately, this is one of the biggest misconceptions in stamp collecting. Age alone does not determine value. Since millions of postage due stamps were printed during different periods, many examples remain relatively common today. Their actual market value depends on several important factors including rarity, condition, centering, gum quality, perforations, printing variety, collector demand, and authentication. Condition is perhaps the single most important factor affecting price. Collectors carefully inspect every part of the stamp under magnification. They examine whether the color remains bright and fresh or has faded over time. They look for tears, creases, stains, thin spots, repaired areas, missing perforations, and damaged corners. Even very small imperfections can reduce the market value significantly because advanced collectors prefer stamps in the finest possible condition. Centering also plays a major role. Ideally, the printed design should be positioned evenly within the perforated borders. Equal margins on all four sides indicate superior centering and usually increase value. Poorly centered examples, where the design is too close to one edge or partially cut by the perforations, generally sell for much less. Another factor collectors examine is whether the stamp is mint or used. A mint stamp has never been used for postal service and often retains its original gum on the reverse side. Mint examples with full original gum and no hinge marks are considerably more valuable than heavily used examples. Used stamps carry cancellation marks applied during postal processing. Light cancellations that leave the design clearly visible are generally more desirable than heavy ink cancellations covering much of the stamp. Printing varieties make this series especially interesting. Although many stamps appear identical to casual observers, specialists recognize numerous differences involving perforation measurements, watermark types, paper varieties, gum characteristics, ink shades, and printing methods. Specialized stamp catalogs identify these varieties with separate catalog numbers because some were produced in much smaller quantities than others. As a result, two stamps that appear nearly identical may differ in value by hundreds of dollars simply because one belongs to a much scarcer printing. Collectors also search for production errors. During the printing process, mistakes occasionally occurred. Some sheets were printed with shifted impressions, double transfers, missing colors, inverted elements, misplaced perforations, or unusual paper varieties. These accidental errors escaped quality control in very limited numbers, making them highly desirable among advanced collectors. While ordinary 3-cent postage due stamps remain relatively affordable, authenticated error varieties can command impressive prices at specialized auctions. Historical significance also contributes to collector interest. These stamps were used during an era when handwritten correspondence formed the backbone of communication throughout the United States. Businesses depended upon reliable mail delivery. Government agencies exchanged official documents through the postal system. Families living thousands of miles apart maintained close relationships through handwritten letters. Every surviving postage due stamp represents a small but important piece of this remarkable communication network. Modern collectors appreciate postage due stamps not only because of their monetary value but also because they illustrate how postal systems solved practical problems. Rather than discarding underpaid mail, the Postal Service developed an organized method to collect unpaid postage while ensuring letters still reached their intended recipients. This practical innovation demonstrates the efficiency and professionalism of the early American postal system. Now let us examine today's approximate market values. Common used examples of the United States 3-cent postage due stamp typically sell for approximately 50 cents to $3 depending on condition. Average and used examples without original gum generally range between $2 and $10. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum and attractive centering frequently sell for $10 to $50. Scarcer watermark varieties or perforation varieties may reach values between $50 and several $100 depending on rarity and collector demand. Exceptionally rare certified examples, unusual printing errors, or outstanding exhibition quality specimens can sometimes exceed $1,000 at major stamp auctions. However, these high-value examples are extremely uncommon and represent only a tiny percentage of surviving stamps. One important lesson for every collector is to ignore unrealistic online asking prices. Many internet sellers list ordinary stamps for hundreds or even thousands of dollars despite having no realistic chance of selling them at those prices. Serious collectors instead study completed auction results, professional dealer inventories, and recognized philatelic catalogs when determining actual market value. A stamp is worth only what knowledgeable buyers are willing to pay in a genuine marketplace. Authentication becomes increasingly important as stamp values increase. Professional philatelic experts carefully examine valuable stamps using microscopes, ultraviolet light, watermark detectors, and other specialized equipment. They verify whether the stamp is genuine, whether any repairs or alterations have been made, whether the gum remains original, and whether the stamp matches its correct catalog variety. Certified examples generally command stronger prices because buyers have greater confidence in their authenticity. Proper storage is essential for preserving collectible value. Experienced collectors always handle stamps with special stamp tongs instead of their fingers because skin oils can damage delicate paper over time. Valuable stamps should be stored in archival quality albums or protective mounts away from direct sunlight, excessive moisture, dust, and insects. Proper preservation helps maintain both appearance and long-term market value. For beginners interested in stamp collecting, the 3 cents postage due stamp offers an excellent opportunity to learn important identification skills. Studying perforations, watermarks, printing methods, gum conditions, and paper varieties helps develop the knowledge required to identify rarer and more valuable stamps in the future. Every experienced philatelist began by learning the basics before advancing to specialized collections. Today, stamp collecting continues to thrive around the world. Modern technology has made research easier than ever before. Collectors can participate in international online auctions, compare prices from dealers worldwide, access digital stamp catalogs, and communicate with fellow enthusiasts through philatelic organizations. Despite changing technology, the fascination with historic postage stamps remains as strong as ever. As we reach the conclusion of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 3 cents postage due stamp is far more than a simple piece of old paper. It represents an important part of American postal history, showcasing how the postal system managed unpaid postage while maintaining efficient mail delivery. Although most surviving examples are affordable and worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, or authenticated production errors can become highly valuable collectibles. Understanding the importance of condition, rarity, authenticity, printing varieties, and collector demand is the key to accurately determining any stamp's market value. Whether your stamp is worth 50 cents or several $100s, every stamp tells a fascinating story about communication, craftsmanship, and history. Next up, the United States 4 cents postage due stamp. At first glance, this stamp may look simple because of its bold numeral design and plain appearance, but for stamp collectors around the world, it represents an important chapter in the history of the United States Postal Service. Although millions of these stamps were printed for official postal use, certain examples have become highly collectible because of their rarity, condition, printing varieties, and historical significance. In today's video, we will take a complete journey through the history of the United States 4 cents postage due stamp, learn why it was created, discover what makes some examples more valuable than others, explore the different varieties collectors search for, and reveal the estimated market value of this classic stamp in today's collector market. Be sure to watch until the very end because a tiny detail that many people overlook could increase the value of this stamp by many times. The stamp shown here is the United States 4 cents postage due stamp, one of the official postage due issues produced by the United States Postal Service during the 20th century. Unlike ordinary postage stamps that customers purchased to prepay mailing costs, postage due stamps served a completely different purpose. They were used by postal employees whenever a letter or package reached the post office without sufficient postage. Instead of returning the mail to the sender, the Postal Service calculated the missing amount and collected that balance from the recipient before delivering the item. This efficient system helped ensure that mail continued moving while allowing the government to recover unpaid postage fees. One of the most noticeable features of this stamp is its bold and practical design. The large black number 4 placed in the center immediately identifies the amount of postage that needed to be collected. The surrounding red engraved frame gives the stamp a professional appearance while making it easy for postal clerks to recognize during busy working hours. Unlike commemorative stamps celebrating presidents, historical events, or national monuments, postage due stamps were designed primarily for efficiency rather than decoration. Their purpose was to communicate information quickly and accurately inside the postal system. During the early decades of the 20th century, handwritten letters remained the primary method of long-distance communication. Every day, millions of personal letters, business documents, invoices, legal papers, newspapers, magazines, and official government correspondence traveled through the American postal network. Occasionally, mistakes occurred. A sender might accidentally use the wrong postage, forget additional postage for extra weight, or miscalculate changing postal rates. Whenever this happened, postal clerks applied postage due stamps to indicate the exact amount that the recipient needed to pay before receiving the mail. These stamps therefore played an essential role in maintaining the financial stability of the postal service. Because postage due stamps were intended for official postal use rather than direct public purchase, they occupy a unique place in philatelic history. Many were heavily handled during postal operations, exposed to moisture, cancellation ink, folding, and transportation damage. As a result, perfectly preserved examples are much less common than many ordinary postage stamps that collectors purchase directly from post offices and carefully stored in albums. One of the most common questions people ask is whether an old stamp automatically becomes valuable simply because it has survived for many decades. The answer is no. Age alone does not determine market value. Millions of postage due stamps were produced over many years, and many examples still exist today. The true value depends upon several important factors, including rarity, condition, centering, gum quality, printing variety, collector demand, authenticity, and overall preservation. Condition is always one of the first things experienced collectors evaluate. Every part of the stamp is carefully examined under magnification. Collectors look for bright original color, sharp printing, complete perforations, clean paper, and attractive overall appearance. They also search for flaws such as tears, creases, stains, repaired areas, missing perforation teeth, fading, thinning, or heavy cancellations. Even very small defects can reduce the value considerably because advanced collectors prefer stamps that have survived in the finest possible condition. Centering is another extremely important factor. Ideally, the printed design should appear perfectly centered within the perforated border, leaving equal margins on all four sides. Well-centered examples are far more desirable than poorly centered copies where the design touches one side or is cut too closely by the perforations. In many cases, excellent centering alone can multiply the market value several times. Collectors also distinguish between mint and used examples. A mint stamp has never been used for postal service and usually retains its original gum on the reverse side. Mint stamps with full original gum and no hinge marks generally command the highest prices. Used examples bear cancellation marks that indicate they passed through the postal system. While many collectors appreciate the historical character of used stamps, heavily cancelled examples usually sell for less than clean mint copies. Another fascinating aspect of the 4-cent postage due stamp is the existence of multiple printing varieties. Although two stamps may appear identical to casual observers, specialists recognize important differences involving watermark types, paper varieties, perforation measurements, gum characteristics, ink shades, and printing methods. Specialized stamp catalogs assign separate catalog numbers to these varieties because some were produced in much smaller quantities than others. This means that two nearly identical stamps can differ dramatically in value depending on their exact printing variety. Collectors also pay close attention to production errors. During the printing process, occasional mistakes escaped quality control. These errors include shifted impressions, double prints, missing colors, inverted elements, misplaced perforations, or unusual paper varieties. Because very few error stamps entered circulation, authenticated examples often become highly valuable collector items. Although the vast majority of 4-cent postage due stamps are common, rare production errors can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars at major stamp auctions. Historical importance adds another level of fascination. These stamps were used during a period when the United States experienced tremendous economic growth, expanding transportation systems, increasing international commerce, and rapidly improving communication networks. Every surviving stamp tells a story about how the postal system handled everyday challenges while ensuring reliable mail delivery throughout the country. Whether attached to a family letter, business invoice, legal document, or government notice, each stamp represents a small piece of American history. Modern stamp collectors appreciate postage due stamps because they document an important aspect of postal operations that many people never see. Unlike ordinary stamps that simply prepaid mailing costs, postage due stamps recorded mistakes, corrections, and financial accounting within the Postal Service. They provide valuable insight into how postal employees solved practical problems long before computers and automated systems existed. Now let us discuss today's estimated market value. Most used examples of the United States 4-cent postage due stamp generally sell for approximately 50 cents to $3 depending on condition. Average and used examples without original gum often range from $2 to $10. Well-preserved mint examples with full original gum, excellent centering, and fresh color frequently sell between $10 and $50. Scarcer watermark varieties, perforation varieties, or specialized catalog numbers may command prices ranging from $50 to several $100s. Certified examples with exceptional quality, unusual printing varieties, or genuine production errors can sometimes exceed $1,000 at specialized philatelic auctions. However, such high-value examples are extremely rare and represent only a very small percentage of surviving stamps. One mistake that many beginners make is believing the extremely high prices they sometimes see on online marketplaces. It is important to understand that asking prices are not the same as actual selling prices. Anyone can list a common stamp for hundreds or thousands of dollars, but that does not mean collectors are willing to pay those amounts. Professional collectors determine market value by studying completed auction sales, recognized philatelic catalogs, dealer inventories, and certified transactions. These sources provide a much more realistic picture of current market demand. Authentication becomes increasingly important as values rise. Professional philatelic experts carefully examine valuable stamps using microscopes, ultraviolet lighting, watermark detectors, perforation gauges, and other specialized equipment. They verify authenticity, identify repairs, confirm original gum, detect alterations, and determine the correct catalog variety. Certified stamps usually sell for higher prices because buyers have confidence in their authenticity and condition. Proper preservation is essential for maintaining collectible value. Experienced collectors never handle valuable stamps with bare fingers because natural skin oils may damage delicate paper over time. Instead, they use special stamp tongs designed specifically for philately. Stamps should be stored in archival quality albums, protective mounts, or acid-free stock books away from direct sunlight, excessive humidity, dust, insects, and temperature fluctuations. Good storage helps preserve both appearance and long-term value for future generations. For beginning collectors, the 4-cent postage due stamp offers an excellent opportunity to learn about stamp identification. Studying watermarks, perforations, paper varieties, gum types, and printing methods develops valuable knowledge that can later be applied to identifying rarer and more expensive stamps. Many experienced philatelists began their collecting journey with affordable postage due issues before expanding into specialized collections. Today, stamp collecting remains one of the world's most rewarding hobbies. Modern technology allows collectors to research stamps online, compare auction results, participate in international sales, communicate with fellow collectors, and access detailed digital catalogs from anywhere in the world. Despite technological advances, the excitement of discovering a rare variety or beautifully preserved stamp remains exactly the same as it was generations ago. As we come to the end of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 4-cent postage due stamp is much more than a simple piece of old paper. It represents an important part of American postal history and demonstrates how the Postal Service successfully handled underpaid mail for many decades. Although most surviving examples remain affordable and are worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, certified authenticity, or unusual production errors can become highly valuable collector items. Understanding condition, rarity, centering, authenticity, printing varieties, and collector demand is the key to accurately determining any stamp's true market value. Whether your 4-cent postage due stamp is worth less than $1 or several $100s, it remains a fascinating historical artifact that reflects the remarkable evolution of communication in the United States. Next up, the United States 5-cent postage due stamp. At first glance, this classic red stamp may appear to be just another ordinary postage label from the past, but for collectors around the world, it represents a fascinating chapter in the history of the United States Postal Service. While millions of these stamps were printed for official postal use, certain varieties have become highly collectible because of their rarity, condition, printing characteristics, and historical significance. In today's video, we will explore the complete history of the United States 5-cent postage due stamp, discover why it was issued, learn how it was used in everyday postal operations, examine the factors that determine its market value, explore the rare varieties collectors search for, and reveal how much this historic stamp may be worth in today's collector market. Stay with us until the end because a few small details that are often overlooked can dramatically increase the value of a stamp that appears almost identical to every other example. The stamp featured here is the United States 5-cent postage due stamp, one of the official postage due issues produced by the United States Postal Service during the early 20th century. Unlike ordinary postage stamps that were purchased by customers before mailing letters, postage due stamps served an entirely different purpose. These stamps were applied by postal employees whenever mail arrived with insufficient postage. Instead of returning the letter to the sender, the post office delivered it to the recipient after collecting the missing postage. This system helped keep mail moving efficiently while ensuring that the Postal Service recovered the money it was owed. One of the most attractive features of this stamp is its elegant engraved design. A large decorative number 5 dominates the center, making the required postage amount immediately recognizable. The words United States appear across the top, while postage due curves prominently through the upper portion of the design. The denomination 5 cents is clearly printed along the bottom, framed by matching numeral 5s in each lower corner. Although simple in appearance, the fine engraving demonstrates the remarkable craftsmanship of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, whose skilled artists produced millions of beautifully detailed stamps during this period. To understand the importance of this stamp, it helps to look back at the American postal system more than 100 years ago. Before email, text messaging, and the internet, written letters were the primary method of long-distance communication. Families exchanged personal news through handwritten letters, businesses depended on the Postal Service for invoices and contracts, newspapers delivered information across the country, and government agencies relied on the mail for official correspondence. Every day, millions of pieces of mail traveled across the United States by train, horse-drawn wagons, steamships, and later by automobiles and airplanes. Despite the efficiency of the Postal Service, mistakes sometimes happened. A sender might accidentally place too few stamps on a letter, underestimate its weight, or forget that postal rates had recently changed. Rather than returning the letter and causing delays, postal clerks simply calculated the missing amount and attached a postage due stamp showing how much the recipient needed to pay before receiving the mail. This practical solution kept communication flowing while protecting postal revenue. Because postage due stamps were intended for internal postal operations instead of public sale, they occupy a unique place in stamp collecting. Most were heavily handled by postal clerks, attached to envelopes, canceled during processing, and eventually discarded after use. As a result, high-quality surviving examples are much less common than many ordinary definitive postage stamps that collectors purchased directly from post offices and carefully preserved in albums. Many people believe that any old stamp must automatically be valuable simply because it has survived for many decades. However, experienced philatelists know that this is not how stamp collecting works. Age alone does not determine market value. Since millions of 5-cent postage due stamps were printed over many years, many examples remain available today. Their value depends on a combination of rarity, condition, collector demand, printing variety, centering, originality, and authenticity. Condition is perhaps the most important factor influencing value. Professional collectors examine every part of the stamp carefully. They look for fresh original color, sharp engraving, clean paper, complete perforations, and an overall attractive appearance. They also inspect the stamp for faults such as tears, creases, stains, fading, missing perforation teeth, repaired corners, thinning, or heavy cancellations. Even a very small defect can reduce market value significantly because advanced collectors always seek the finest available examples. Centering is another critical factor. A perfectly centered stamp has equal margins surrounding the design on all 4 sides. Such examples are much more desirable than poorly centered stamps where the printed design touches one edge or is cut too closely by the perforations. In some cases, exceptional centering can increase the value of an otherwise common stamp by several times. Collectors also distinguish between mint and used examples. Mint stamps have never been used for mailing and usually retain their original gum on the reverse side. Mint examples with full original gum and no hinge marks generally command the highest prices because they represent the stamp exactly as it left the printing press. Used examples, while historically interesting, often sell for less because they carry cancellation marks applied during postal processing. Another fascinating aspect of this series is the existence of numerous printing varieties. Although two 5-cent postage due stamps may appear identical to casual observers, specialists recognize important differences involving watermark types, perforation measurements, paper varieties, gum characteristics, printing methods, and ink shades. Specialized philatelic catalogs assign separate catalog numbers to these varieties because some were printed in much smaller quantities than others. As a result, two stamps that look almost exactly alike may have dramatically different market values. Collectors are especially interested in production errors. During the printing process, occasional mistakes escaped quality control. These include inverted designs, double impressions, shifted colors, missing ink, misplaced perforations, and unusual paper varieties. Since very few error stamps entered circulation, authenticated examples often become highly valuable collector items. While the majority of 5-cent postage due stamps are common, rare error varieties have attracted strong interest at specialized stamp auctions and can sell for impressive amounts. Historical significance also adds to the appeal of this stamp. Every surviving example represents a small piece of America's communication history. These stamps were attached to letters carrying family news, business agreements, legal notices, financial records, and government correspondence. Each stamp reminds us of a time when handwritten letters connected people across thousands of miles and when the postal service played an essential role in everyday life. Modern collectors appreciate postage due stamps because they tell a different story from ordinary postage stamps. Instead of celebrating famous people or important historical events, these stamps reveal the practical side of running one of the world's largest postal systems. They demonstrate how postal employees solve problems quickly and efficiently while maintaining reliable mail service throughout the nation. Now let us discuss today's estimated market value. Most used examples of the United States 5-cent postage due stamp typically sell for approximately 50 cents to $5 depending on their condition. Average and used examples without original gum generally range between $2 and $10. Well-preserved mint examples with original gum, excellent centering, and bright color frequently sell between $15 and $75. Scarcer watermark varieties, perforation varieties, or specialized catalog numbers may command prices ranging from $100 to several $100s. Exceptionally rare certified examples with outstanding condition, unusual printing varieties, or major production errors can sometimes exceed $1,000 at major philatelic auctions. However, such examples are extremely rare and represent only a tiny percentage of surviving stamps. One important lesson for collectors is to ignore unrealistic asking prices sometimes seen on online marketplaces. It is common to find ordinary stamps listed for hundreds or even thousands of dollars by inexperienced sellers. However, asking prices do not represent actual market value. Professional collectors determine value by studying completed auction sales, recognized stamp catalogs, dealer price lists, and certified transactions. These sources provide a far more accurate picture of what collectors are genuinely willing to pay. Authentication becomes increasingly important as values increase. Professional philatelic experts examine valuable stamps using microscopes, perforation gauges, watermark detectors, ultraviolet lighting, and other specialized equipment. They verify authenticity, identify repairs, confirm original gum, detect alterations, and determine the correct catalog variety. Certified examples usually bring stronger prices because buyers have greater confidence in their authenticity. Proper preservation is essential for protecting collectible value. Experienced collectors always handle stamps with special stamp tongs rather than bare fingers because natural skin oils can damage delicate paper over time. Stamps should be stored in archival quality albums, acid-free stock books, or protective mounts away from direct sunlight, excessive humidity, dust, insects, and extreme temperatures. Proper storage helps preserve both appearance and long-term value for future generations. For beginners entering the hobby, the 5-cent postage due stamp provides an excellent opportunity to learn the fundamentals of stamp identification. Studying watermarks, perforations, paper varieties, printing methods, gum conditions, and engraving techniques helps develop the skills needed to identify more valuable stamps in the future. Many experienced philatelists began their collecting journey with affordable postage due issues before expanding into highly specialized collections. Today, stamp collecting remains one of the world's most rewarding hobbies. Thanks to modern technology, collectors can research stamps online, compare auction results, access digital catalogs, join philatelic societies, communicate with experts, and participate in international auctions from anywhere in the world. Yet despite these technological advances, the excitement of discovering a rare variety or beautifully preserved stamp remains exactly the same as it was generations ago. As we come to the end of today's video, we can clearly see that the United States 5-cent postage due stamp is far more than an ordinary piece of old paper. It represents an important chapter in American postal history and demonstrates how the Postal Service successfully managed underpaid mail during a time when written correspondence connected millions of people every day. While most surviving examples are worth only a few dollars, certain varieties with exceptional condition, rare printing characteristics, certified authenticity, or genuine production errors can become highly valuable collectibles. Understanding rarity, condition, centering, authenticity, printing varieties, and collector demand is the key to determining a stamp's true market value. Whether your 5-cent postage due stamp is worth less than $1 or several $100s, it remains a remarkable historical artifact that preserves the story of America's postal system for future generations. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this detailed guide has helped you better understand the history, identification, rarity, and current market value of the United States 5-cent postage due stamp in today's global stamp collecting market.